Close your eyes, just for a moment, and imagine the whole world asleep. The city silent, the sky still dark, time suspended between two worlds. But inside you, something is awake, something that insists on calling you, night after night, always at the same hour, 3 in the morning, as if the universe had set a meeting with you and no longer accepts being ignored. It may seem like nothing more than insomnia, just a small detail. But what if it's something much greater? What if this awakening is, in fact, a whisper from the soul that the mind still cannot decipher? Perhaps you've asked yourself, with a certain weariness and even a touch of fear, why is this happening to me? Maybe you think it's stress or an overflow of thoughts, and it could be. But there is something deeper behind it, something that science is just beginning to touch, that spirituality has always known, and that your heart already senses. The hour of 3 a.m. carries a frequency that transcends logic and touches the invisible. This is the moment when the veil between the visible and the invisible becomes thinner, when the body is still sleepy, but consciousness is alert, when the rational mind quiets, and what remains is what truly matters. According to Dr. Bruce Lipton, our energy field, the one that goes beyond the physical body, enters a state of heightened sensitivity during the early hours of the morning. At 3 a.m. in particular, the biological system is more receptive. Brain frequencies slow down, approaching states like theta and delta, the same states we access in deep meditation or in experiences of expanded consciousness. It is in this subtle terrain that unconscious memories surface, that old patterns begin to dissolve, and that the body listens to what the soul is trying to say. It is no coincidence that so many spiritual traditions regard this hour as a portal. Gregg Braden speaks of the unified field of consciousness as an ocean that is always there, waiting for our vibration to align so that we can hear it. At 3 a.m., this field comes closer to us like a silent river, bringing messages, insights, intuitions, but most of us ignore it. We roll over, try to fall back asleep, drink tea, take a pill, because we've learned that the silence of the night is uncomfortable, because we were told that emptiness is dangerous. But what if it isn't? What if this discomfort is an invitation? What if that strange feeling in the middle of the night is the beginning of a healing you've been postponing for years? What seems like a disturbance may simply be the mind's resistance to a new level of consciousness trying to emerge. Maybe what you call insomnia is your energy field trying to bring you back to yourself. Not as punishment, not as a curse, but as a calling. In this video, we will walk through that calling together. We will understand why this hour is so powerful, not only spiritually, but also biologically, energetically, vibrationally. We will look at this moment with new eyes, the eyes of the soul, because waking up at 3 a.m. may be the beginning of something you've been asking for a very long time, but just didn't yet know how to hear. And now, finally, the silence will begin to speak. Waking up at the same hour, as if pulled by an invisible thread, is not chance. It's a pattern. And every pattern, when it repeats, is trying to teach us something. When the clock reads 3 a.m. and your eyes open, there is an energy field moving inside you. Even though outwardly, everything seems still. It can be uncomfortable. It can seem meaningless, but it is real. It is the soul touching what the mind insists on keeping asleep. Often, this awakening comes with a nameless restlessness, an emptiness in the chest, a recurring thought, a longing that can't be explained. In those moments, it feels like the body wakes before reason, and that is not a mistake. It's an invitation, because while the world sleeps, parts of you are asking to be heard. Unexpressed emotions, decisions not made, truths not lived. Waking at 3 a.m. can be the reflection of a life misaligned with your essence, as if something inside you is saying, "This isn't you," but in silence, without words, only with the invisible weight of the unspoken. Dr. Bruce Lipton reminds us that the body is not separate from the soul. The energy field directly influences the cells, the biochemistry, the internal systems. That means what you feel in silence, even what you haven't yet understood, is already being heard by your cells. The body responds to the field, and if the field is in conflict, the body tries to warn you, sometimes by waking you in the middle of the night. Other times with constant fatigue, an anxiety that won't go away, or a dissatisfaction no one else sees. The early hours in this sense are like a 0 point, a sacred interval where everything sleeps except what needs to be healed. It is in this silence that the unconscious finds room to manifest, and what emerges at this hour is not an enemy. It is a part of you that wants to come back home. Sometimes the awakening is abrupt, but what awakens is what no longer fits. And what no longer fits asks for transformation. You may feel alone, but you are not. There is wisdom behind these awakenings, a frequency trying to remind you who you are, before fear, before the rush, before the distractions. This hour of the night is not random. It is a vibrational mirror, a mirror that reflects gently, but also firmly, what you can no longer postpone. And even if you do not fully understand, your body understands, your soul understands, the field understands. Because at 3 a.m., it is not the mind that wakes. It is the spirit trying to talk to you. And that conversation begins in silence. It's understandable. When something unsettles us, the immediate tendency is to try to fix it. We look for an external cause, a quick solution, something that can restore control. And when sleep is repeatedly interrupted at 3 a.m., many turn to what is within reach. A calming tea, relaxing music, a natural supplement. None of that is wrong, but perhaps it is incomplete. What few realize is that this so-called sleep problem may not be a problem at all, but a vibrational code trying to express itself. There is a silent wisdom in everything that repeats with constancy. Waking at the same hour is like an alarm ringing inside your field, not to punish you, but to show you that something in you is misaligned. Something is vibrating out of center. The dissonance between what you live and what you feel begins to grow unbearable. And the soul, in its firm compassion, lights this signal. Bruce Lipton shows us, with the clarity of spiritual science, that what we believe, even unconsciously, shapes our physiology. Deep beliefs, the ones you don't put into words, but that live within you, create biochemical realities. When you live out of alignment with what you feel, this conflict manifests: anxiety, sleep disturbances, a sense of exhaustion. But instead of listening to what is trying to emerge, we learn to silence it, to cover the windows of feeling with medications, distractions, or rational justifications. But there comes a time when nothing can cover it anymore. At 3 a.m., when all is quiet, what remains is what is true. And if you allow yourself to feel, you may realize that what wakes you is not just any thought. It is an energy field trying to show you the way back to yourself. It is not about seeking more control, but about listening more deeply. Because at this hour, the body is not only asking for rest, it is asking for vibrational coherence. It is asking for truth. The error is not in trying to sleep. It is in ignoring what this awakening might hold. Because often, there lies the chance for reconnection. A turning point that is silent, yet sacred. When you stop treating this moment as a failure and begin to welcome it as the language of the field, something shifts. The symptom becomes a signal. The discomfort becomes a key. Insomnia becomes a portal. And in that space between one thought and another, between a sigh and a discomfort, there is a truth waiting to be heard. Not in haste, not in fear, but with the listening of one who knows the soul speaks. It always has. And at 3 a.m., perhaps it is speaking louder. There is a moment in the night when everything seems suspended, neither day nor night, neither dream nor wakefulness. It's as if time pauses and the world forgets to breathe. At 3 a.m., this absolute silence can feel frightening, but it carries something rare, the absence of external noise. And in the absence of the world, what emerges is what was inside you all along. That's why many feel discomfort at this hour, because for the first time in the day, the noise from outside stops, and what remains is the sound of the soul, still muffled, still subtle, but finally perceptible. This emptiness is not a void. It is fertile space, a field ready to welcome the new. It is the vibrational soil where consciousness can finally reach the surface of your life. Gregg Braden speaks of the quantum field as a living intelligence, sensitive, responsive. This field does not ignore us. It waits. It waits for the frequency of our heart to align with the frequency of truth. And it is during the early hours, especially in this interval between worlds, that the mind grows quiet enough for the heart to begin to speak. What we often interpret as discomfort or insomnia is, in truth, a vibrational shock. The mind, conditioned to control, is startled by the presence of the unknown. But this unknown is not a threat. It is the field itself drawing near. It is the intelligence of the invisible trying to manifest. Yet to perceive it, you must not run, not distract yourself, not retreat into old refuges. At 3 a.m., the heart becomes the main antenna. Not the physical heart, but the subtle center that vibrates beyond logic. And it is there that the answers reside, answers to questions you didn't even know you were asking. The discomfort often arises from the mind's attempt to translate something only the soul understands, and because it cannot control it, it resists. But when that resistance yields, even for just a few seconds, a strange, almost imperceptible sensation appears, as if something is trying to be born. It is not a time to act. It is a time to listen. Because this emptiness that opens is not absence. It is pure presence. It is the field in a state of waiting, waiting for you, for your listening, for your intention, for your courage to no longer run from what you feel. And perhaps in this silent interval, you will discover that what wakes you is not insomnia. It is life wanting to begin again. Within you, there is a very delicate moment between opening your eyes and the first thought. A sacred second where consciousness is still free of defenses, stories, and judgments. When you wake at 3 a.m., that instant exists, and it is there that the opportunity lives. Because there, between silence and breath, the field draws near. And what once seemed like an annoyance can reveal itself as a subtle invitation to reconnection. When the mind wakes, it tends to look for explanations. But the energy field does not speak in words. It communicates in frequency, in sensation, in presence. That's why the first step is not to understand. It is to feel. Breath, in that moment, becomes a bridge. Inhaling deeply and exhaling slowly is not just a physiological act. It is a gesture of opening, of listening, of surrender. Bruce Lipton explains that our cells are sensitive to the internal vibrational environment. They respond not only to what we think, but to what we feel repeatedly and deeply. And in that intermediate state between sleep and wakefulness, the body becomes more receptive, more pliable, as if it were ready to absorb a new message, a new vibration, a new direction. It is in that moment that planting a simple, silent intention can alter the field around and within you. This is not about creating grand visualizations or repeating rehearsed phrases. It is about holding an intention coherent with who you want to become. It can be a brief phrase, but one felt with truth. I am at peace. I trust the timing of my soul. I accept who I am. By vibrating that intention with calm breath and a surrendered body, the field picks up on it, and it responds. Because the field is responsive, as Gregg Braden reminds us, it reacts to emotional coherence, to inner clarity, not to perfection, but to authenticity. This moment of awakening can then be transformed from disturbance into ritual, from discomfort into reconnection. What was noise now becomes a bridge to the part of you that knows, that always knew, and that can now finally be heard. Because the body is not just awake, it is available. The heart is not just beating, it is transmitting. And the soul, which woke you with such care, can now rest in presence, because finally you are there, whole, in silence, in listening, in vibration. There is a kind of silence that does not represent absence, but potency, a kind of darkness that does not bring fear, but fertility. The early hours, especially around 3 a.m., are like a cosmic womb, quiet on the outside, yet profoundly alive within. It is the womb of the invisible, the space where the new takes shape before it can be seen, where the seed vibrates before it sprouts. And it is into this energetic womb that you are often called back. Waking at this hour is like being pulled into a gestational process of the soul. Something is forming, something that has no name yet, no shape yet, but already pulses within you. It is as if the field were saying, it's not ready to be born yet, but it needs your presence to grow. And this growth does not happen in noise. It happens in the dark. It happens in silence. It happens when you stop running from what you do not yet understand. This silent calling is the threshold between two worlds, the visible, with its certainties, routines, and form, and the invisible, where everything is vibration, potential, and intuition. At 3 a.m., you are not just awake. You are between worlds, and this in-between place is sacred, because it is there that you can hear what the rush of the day conceals. It is there that you can feel that something greater is stitching meaning behind the apparent chaos of life. Neville Goddard said that imagination is the beginning of all creation. And where does imagination ignite more strongly, if not in the dark? It is in this nocturnal space that inner images gain freedom, and the heart can project into the field what it longs to see manifested. The early morning in this sense is more than a time. It is a vibrational matrix. It is the place where the soul rehearses the birth of the new. You may not know what is being born. Perhaps everything still feels confusing, disorganized, even uncomfortable. But that, too, is part of the process. The gestation of the invisible does not happen through logic. It happens through surrender. In the silent space where you simply feel, where you simply breathe, where you simply trust. Because something within you knows you are not waking by chance. You are not alone. This awakening carries a purpose, even if still hidden. And if you listen closely, even in the deepest silence, you may notice something is moving, not outside, inside. And what vibrates within will sooner or later manifest without, because the early hours are not an ending. They are a beginning, a womb, a field, a creation. Spiritual awakening does not always arrive with lights, certainties, or immediate revelations. Many times, it begins quietly, in the middle of the night, without anyone noticing. It begins when the body wakes without reason, when the eyes open without explanation, when the heart beats stronger even in the dark. And this silent, almost imperceptible beginning carries a deep calling. There is something within you asking to come through. There is something within you asking for truth. Bruce Lipton teaches us that what we connect with, the field we access, depends on the vibration we sustain. If we wake at 3 a.m. amid internal conflicts, it may be because our vibration is trying to adjust to a higher field. And that adjustment is not always comfortable, because expansion requires release, and release at times hurts. But pain, when listened to with presence, becomes a guide. When felt with respect, it transforms into a path. Gregg Braden reminds us that the heart is an antenna, a bridge between the visible and the invisible, between what we feel and what manifests. When that antenna comes into coherence, the field responds with precision. And perhaps without realizing it, this awakening in the middle of the night is exactly the moment when your antenna aligns. When, for a few seconds, you are closer to yourself than you have been in days. When the field finally finds an open channel to deliver what you need, not what your mind wants, but what your soul is asking for. That is why these awakenings are not accidents. They are not failures. They are invitations. Invitations to listen more deeply to yourself, to recognize yourself beyond distractions, to remember who you are, before the wounds, before the rush, before the masks. It is not about escaping reality, but about reprogramming it from the inside out, about vibrating the new with truth, about planting what you want to see bloom. And if, the next time, you wake again, at that same hour, maybe you won't need to ask why anymore. Maybe you will simply feel, breathe, and trust. Because what seems like insomnia may only be the beginning of your truth wanting to be born, the beginning of your soul wanting to show you that you are already on the path, even in the dark, even in silence, even alone, because waking at 3 a.m. is the field saying, I am with you.